Garoppolo. Thrown down. Brian Burns gets there. Spider-Man. What a pass rush by Burns. See how quickly he got to the edge and got
This is Desmond Johnson on the Bleav and Carolina Panthers podcast, here on the Bleav Podcast Network, the #1 podcast network for professionals. Do you Bleav? If you enjoy the show, please subscribe and rate the show on iTunes. We're available in your favorite directories: iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, Luminary, and TuneIn. You can also find us at Bleav.com and at Bleav Podcast on Twitter. The gang is all here after a couple of weeks where we've been kind of all three of us in and out. All three of us are back. It's Bleav in Carolina Panthers. I'm your host, Desmond Johnson, joined by Sports Illustrated beat writer Schuyler, Callihan, and the Panthers' all-time leading rusher in Jonathan Stewart. Of course, every week live on Tuesdays here on the Bleav Podcast Network and Tobacco Road Sports Radio's YouTube channel. Loaded show today. Of course, we're going to get into it. The Carolina Panthers dropped to 1-12 on the season after falling to the New Orleans Saints on Sunday. We'll get to that. It's open mailbag, so of course you guys can chime in if you're in and you're listening or watching the show, like our man Muscles Marinara down in Spartanburg, home of Monsters subs. If you're down in that area, go check out those subs. That might be the best sub I've ever had in my life. So definitely go down there and check that out.
RIP training camp.
Yeah. They were the first people I thought of, too, when I saw they were moving training camp. I'm like, damn. So definitely you can chime in with your comments and your requests here, like everyone is in here. Thanks for everybody stopping by. Stu's Bright Spots, new segment. We decided we need to bring a little positivity to the Panther fan base, and we're going to do that today. Stu's going to give us something he saw that was positive in Sunday's loss to the Panthers, kind of like going through a haystack and picking out gnats at this point, but I think Stu will be able to handle it. So he's got a little something he's going to tee up for us there. Around the league, we'll talk about that offsides call in that Chiefs-Bills game. I don't think I've ever seen Pat Mahomes so mad in his career. So we'll talk a little bit about that. The NFC is a dumpster fire. It's not just us; it's the whole conference. There might be two teams that get in with a sub 500 record into the playoffs. So we'll talk about that as well. And today we are starting our Panther Trials. Who is responsible for this nonsense? We're going to try to get to the bottom of this each week for the rest of the season. We're going to pick out one player, personnel, front office exec, and we're going to kind of just go through the timeline and figure out how much did they really have an effect on this season. Today, we're starting at the very top with owner David Tepper. Before we get into it, we're going to start off with Stu's Bright Spots. Word from our sponsors at BetOnline. All the major sports are in action this week with the college football playoffs ready to kick off. BetOnline is your #1 destination for all your sports wagering info, including news for pro football, the NBA, upcoming fights, and NHL games this season. Head to the website today to get into the action and see all the updated odds for the week. Remember to use the promo code Bleav, BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online where the game starts. And we're going to start with Stu's Bright Spots. What did you see on Sunday that made you smile, Stu, while I go and mute this television that's on the other side of that room here?
Well, shout out to the offensive line creating some lanes, some running lanes. Bright spots, it's been a struggle all season. I mean, if you look back, and if we could have ran the ball like we did on Sunday against the Saints, the intentionality, it seems, that we've been having the last 2 weeks, we could have probably won some more games. I'm not going to sit here and say we could have won the amount of games that would have us in playoff contention. I think our passing game right now is still, at loss. But the bright spot is, the struggles of protecting the quarterback still exist, but running the ball seems to be a task that the Carolina Panthers can handle. And the most consistent piece to that puzzle is Chuba Hubbard. I texted you guys, the other day, feeling really high, about how I felt, just seeing how hard he's been working, seeing really just like watching him progress throughout the last 3 years as a runner. I was very excited and listed off the fact that he could possibly be a top 15 running back in the league. And I mean, I still think that he can be that, right? Top 10, top 15, keep working, especially if we dedicate, ourselves as an organization to running the ball the way we have been. He can make his case. I mean, the way he runs, one cut, get upfield, and he's not afraid of contact. Setting the tone, as a running back is one of the most important, things at that position. It's an opportunity to set the stage. It's an opportunity, to let the defense know it's going to be a long day. And he's been doing that every chance he's had this whole entire year. Hasn't had that many opportunities as I think he would like, as the fan base would like. But every time he touches the ball, he's making a case. So that's a bright spot. Chuba Hubbard, straight out of Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, 24 years old.
I know that.
Shout out to you, my man. Keep working, and keep being a dog. And then Miles Sanders, running game.
The running game.
Like, you put this guy in space, he makes people look stupid. So just figure it out.
He just didn't have space. He just didn't have space.
Right. And people, like, have a lot to say about him and how Carolina Panthers brought him in and all that. Like, as you can see, he's gifted. These running backs, the guys that tote the rock in this league, they are here for a reason. They're not here by mistake. There's a lot of guys that can make people look stupid and make people, fall off of their hips as they're breaking tackles. But they're picked for a reason. Miles Sanders proved I think he's proved to the fan base, to NFL, that he is special. And that one long run that he broke off there, that somehow we didn't figure out how to get into the end zone with 3-4 opportunities. It still boggles me. We'll get to that. No, we ain't talking about what we're mad about. We just sticking on the positives.
Right. Yeah, we'll save it.
The positives is that Miles Sanders and Chuba Hubbard, let's give them a round of applause. Keep working, keep trucking. Offensive line, keep moving guys out the way, keep moving that furniture, and just stay ahead of any miscellaneous talk that you hear out here in these streets.
The run game, actually, best run game of the season, 207 yards total. Yeah. I'm reading that wrong. 204 yards rushing on the ground for the Panthers on Sunday. Held the Saints to under 197 yards. It's crazy when you look at the box score and you're looking through the numbers. It's like, how did Carolina lose this game by the amount that how did they lose 28-6? They almost outgained the Saints by 100 yards total. Now, granted, we only threw for Bryce. I need to address this with Bryce Young, because I've been getting this back and forth from they're starting to grow into two camps. And we saw it before with Cam Newton, where it's like the Cam can do no wrong. Why are you blaming Cam Newton camp? And then it's well, maybe we need to look at Bryce Young camp. And over the past 2 weeks, I felt my Anakin Skywalker kind of move over to let's take a harder look at Bryce, because I feel like we've kind of given him a pass because he was the number one overall pick and the situation around him, which is completely understandable. But there was some things that he could work on, at least, that he wasn't really working on. Did either one of you notice? Because we didn't even talk on Sunday. I think we all were just kind of like, ugh, like while we were watching it. Did any of you guys notice that Bryce was actually dropping back in the pocket on Sunday, like more pronounced than any other time this year? And what happened? He had more deeper balls. He was climbing the ladder. He was getting some weight behind those throws, and they were hitting. This was the first game all year, I felt like, where Bryce was sitting his dudes in the numbers, like in the face, like with the ball, and they were just dropping it. Like they were dropping it all day. And he would have looked a lot better stat-wise if like DJ Chark had caught a couple of these. That one deep one he had to Mingo where he just kind of slightly overthrew him, but I can't tell if Mingo let up on the run. And he was under center. He was under center a lot more on Sunday too, and they did a lot more play action, which just naturally created more space for him as he's running back to survey the field. It looked like Bryce looked more comfortable throwing the ball on Sunday Then he had
and then why he was also more comfortable, because we had 200 plus yards rushing.
We were running the ball. Yeah. I mean, we were running the ball. Like this whole thing where he's like, he's not comfortable under center, but you need to get comfortable. This is the NFL. Like you can't be in shotgun 90% of the time. Like it's not high school. You can't just stand back there like a statue and throw it around. And that debate had been going on for a couple of weeks. Of course, I had Joe Person on Franchise Players last week after their article. Him and Diana Rossini's article dropped on The Athletic last week, right after our show. It dropped, and they basically just detailed everything that had been going on behind the scenes with the Panthers. Schuyler, I was going to ask you, ask Joe the same question. Being in the media and being, in the press room, every week, asking questions to the coaches and everything else all season, thinking back on it, do you recall there being tension like between the coaches and staff, like in terms of like things they were saying at the podium? And do you recall a sort of rift, or because it feels like it really kind of came to a head right around Thanksgiving, like around that area is when it really started to bottom out? I
don't know. It's hard to read if there's tension, but I think there's difference in opinion, because you would hear things that Frank would say on Wednesday, and then we talked to Thomas on Thursday, and it's like Thomas would give or be asked similar questions but give slightly different answers, and maybe it'd be the other way around. But I feel like there was just a clear butting of heads, and maybe it wasn't like, Frank would always use this term healthy tension, right? And maybe it was healthy tension in the terms of like they weren't maybe going at each other's throat, but maybe it was just they had their own ways in their offensive philosophies, and it just clashed, and it just never was able to mend together. But I think Bryce on Sunday, like I think he did look more comfortable throwing the ball, but I'll say he looked kind of anxious. Like he had a lot of happy feet in the pocket. He never really settled down. And I think a lot of that's just the pressure. I mean, for goodness sake, like they had an 8-man protection and still got home. Like, how does that happen?
Was that the one where the pocket just collapsed in like 2 seconds or whatever, and he just was underneath a mound of man, like in the backfield?
He got beat on an inside move. I don't remember who it was. It may have been – I don't think it was Cameron Jordan, but he got beat on an inside move, just got pressure to the backside, and then Chuba and Tommy Tremble were in a two-man or a duo block, and they just got beat off the edge too. And that was the one that forced the fumble. So, or the interception, whatever you want to call it. But it was bad. But I mean, I think this is going to show more clarity, I think, in what Thomas wants to do or what he wants to be as a play caller. The bad thing is he's probably not going to be here in about a month. So, and this is kind of the talk that I've been having with some of my people is just like, does it even make sense? Because we talked about it 2 weeks ago. Does it make sense for Bryce to even be out there at this point? And I said on this very show, yes, keep him out there. I'm kind of going to the other side now.
Switch, yeah.
I don't know, because like, does it really do him any good because of the confidence level? And you're putting him out there in harm's way, but there's also this aspect too, like he's not going to be in this offense in a couple of months. So what's the point in throwing him out there in an offense he's not going to run? You're putting him in harm's way. It's a total mess right now. There's no benefit, I don't think, right now.
I was there a couple of weeks ago. Like it just I'm trying to figure out what's the benefit of keeping him out there at this point, because this offensive line, and even with them under center and with the play action and some tweaks that they've done, it just lowered the sack total from 6 or 7 to 3 or 4. That's all it really did. It just cut it in half.
And what happens if
that's progress.
It's progress. it's progress. But I'm just like, yo.
If Bryce suffered a serious injury over these last 4 games, and it's like a long-term deal, like we're just throwing that hypothetical out there, that's going to have an effect on the coaching search.
Yeah, because he's your Ferrari in the garage at this point, right? Like out of all the assets we have, he's kind of
he may not be the most proven. I mean, the most proven is obviously Brian Burns, Derek Brown, so on and so forth. But in terms of like, he's got to be number one because he's the guy you invested so much in, and he's the number one guy at the position. So like, I think you got to protect him a little bit, not only physically but mentally. I mean, this is a kid that has seen nothing and experienced nothing but success since he first touched the football.
Oh, he's lost more this year than he probably has his entire high school and college career. Yeah, just in the past 3 months. Like, I can't even imagine. Imagine being Andy Dalton in this situation. Like, me in the locker room knowing that eventually they're going to be like, you go out there. You go out there and do this. And he's been watching from the sideline this whole season. This offensive line just kind of turned into – it started off like on just one dude, and now it's almost like they haven't kept the same starting lineup in there, which was a benefit last year. They pretty much had the same line all year, and that was a great benefit to have. This year, man, they can't – dude, it was the first play of the game. First play of the game. Who was the guard that got hurt? McCray? First play. First play of the game, he gets carted out. I'm just like, you got to be kidding me. Like, this is insanity. And it just piles on and piles on and piles on. I don't see – now, we sat here and said that Bryce had a good game, but stat-wise, he was 13 for 36 for 137 yards, no touchdowns. He was 1 for 10 to start off the game. So when I say he had a good game throwing it, I meant like comfort level in terms of throwing it deep, because we hadn't really been seeing that all year. Sunday was the first day where we actually saw Bryce taking shots downfield. And I do feel like it's because either the article from Joe Person and Diana Rossini, he read it and was like, oh, maybe I'm not dropping back. Or somebody in the building read it and finally came up to him and was like, hey, start taking 2-3 steps back when you get the snap so you can see, because you can't see anything when you're just standing there. And I don't know. I just thought he looked a little better like that. But to your point, Schuyler, he did have some happy feet. And actually, Jonathan Vilma mentioned it on the broadcast that it looked like he had happy feet in the game. And who can blame him at this point? But I do want to mention one thing. I'm going to tell you why we mad, son. The ones that are defending Bryce Young, y'all got to chill. Because, like, y'all are coming at the ones that are questioning Bryce Young as if we're saying he's a bust. And we're not. I don't want him to be a bust. Like you just said, Schuyler, if he's a bust, we're set back 5 years plus. You know, like, if this does not work out, he can't be a bust. I'm not rooting against the kid, but it's not out of the realm of possibility to be like, he was the number 1 draft pick overall and quarterback, and we gave up a fortune for him, and we're in week 13 or week 14 or whatever it is. Is it not fair to question some of Bryce Young's play at this point? Like, I mean, I'm not saying the dude is bad, but
I got asked a really good question yesterday on, I think it was ESPN Charlotte. I did 2 ESPN ones, I couldn't remember. I think it was ESPN Charlotte, and they were asking me, has Bryce progressed in any area since the start of the season? I started thinking, I'm like, damn, like I don't know that he has him. Like, if you think about it, but I also don't think he's like regressed a lot either. I think he's really just the same kid that he was in Florida.
Yeah, that's how I feel. Yeah, I don't know if it's almost like he's going to go through rookie year all over again next year with whoever the coach is going to be that comes in, because
redshirt year.
Yeah, it's a painful.
I can tell you. Like, as much as we want to sit here and look at games and say, man, I don't see the Panthers getting better, because obviously they're 1-10 or whatever the record is right now. 1-10?
1-12.
1-12.
I appreciate you trying to cut some of the memories out of there, but
yeah. But they're 1-12. And like, you have a guy like Bryce, like, it is what it is, and it ain't what it ain't. Right now, we can't make any judgments about who he is as a quarterback, and we say this every week because he out there running for his life.
He really is.
He's not playing. He's protecting himself, trying to figure out how to deliver the ball under stress and continued stress. You know, and the fact of the matter is 11 guys have to execute and do their job on every single play, especially on offense. If one guy does not do their play, you will miss an opportunity. If one guy has a penalty, a flag, whatever it is, the play doesn't exist. So what I saw on this past game is execution. We can call for people's heads. I know we're going to get to who we blame, but at the end of the day, like, players play, coaches coach, and yeah, coaches are supposed to put guys in position to win, which they figured that out in the run game. They put the running backs and the offensive line in position to win, which therefore helped Bryce Young in his passing game, giving him some opportunities to shoot the ball downfield. Now, on the receiving end on that, execution from the receivers, right?
Got to catch it.
You got to catch the ball, and we get it. Like, it's not as easy as it's not as easy as what everybody hopes it to seem like. You're downfield, you're being guarded, by a guy that's getting paid the same amount as you, and he's got a family, he's got to make a play. And yeah, we don't come up with the ball, but your job is to come up with the ball, especially when it's put on you. So there's a lot of things that just aren't happening. And we can't sit here and say, oh, Bryce this, Bryce that. It's a multitude of a lot of things. And until we get some solid ground, a good base, like, we can't really shoot ourselves in the foot and create receipts that we're going to look back on one day and say, dang, I shouldn't have said that.
I just wanted Bryce to back up in the pocket. That was really my only thing that I've been hearing. Right. Just take it back, man. And he finally did.
And I think maybe he's doing that because there was an alleviated pressure from the run game. Like, you guys, if you know that guys are about to hit a home run on you, defense is going to play a little bit different. You start slashing guys in the running lanes and all that, they're going to play different. And I think we saw that, on Sunday, and we had opportunities. I mean, you look at the play calling, we can say, what was he thinking? But had they connected and executed, we would have been like, man, he's the greatest offensive coordinator ever.
Oh, but they didn't. And you just reminded me of because we need to discuss this. I completely forgot about it until you mentioned that part. What were they doing? Was it 3rd and 1, about midfield? 4th and 1, about midfield twice. And they lined up empty backfield, shotgun, and threw it deep. You only needed what you do was running for like 4 yards of clip or whatever at that point, and like you throw it deep.
Yeah, throw that out route.
I'm just like, even going on 4th down, but
on it. Like,
what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Like, it felt like high school play calling to me. And like, did you see Thomas Brown's wife had put up that tweet about how they're already fired or whatever, and they're only there because somebody needs to call plays?
It's nonstop drama.
Then she deleted her Twitter account like immediately, like after that, so it's not even there anymore.
I think what it is, man, it's a reminder that's a reminder that these are human beings, fellas.
Yeah,
they call them plays; it's their job, but they are at the hands of everyone to make a statement with these Twitter fingers.
But that was like,
ain't nobody got no time for that. If you put the average person out of nowhere and put them out there into the space where everybody can see them. Oh, why'd you stop at Starbucks and not Dunkin' Donuts? Oh, that's so stupid. Oh, why'd you walk your dog? Why'd you walk your dog twice today? Like in the span of 2 hours.
Weirdo. What's wrong?
You should let him just roam around the backyard. Like, or why'd you feed your child that? That's all the chemicals in it. Da, 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 da. Like, I don't know. Like, if you really think about it, like, it's just it comes with the territory. Yeah. But what this is a reminder of is that people in that stadium they care more about this than you do. Trust me. They care more about winning than anybody else.
It's their livelihood on the line.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah.
The funny thing about it is I'm trying to think, I think it was Thursday. We were in the locker room, and I was talking to Nick Carboni, who's at WCNC, and we were just chatting up in the locker room. And then all of a sudden, Sam Franklin just walks by, and he's got this like mic. I don't even know what it is. It's like some sort of microphone that some camera people use for the Panthers. And he walks straight up to Nick and goes, "So, what do you think about your boss?" And he started talking about, like, asking Nick all these random questions about his boss and stuff. And he's like, yeah, you don't like it, do you? It was the funniest thing.
Good for him.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that.
He wasn't taking a shot at Nick because we weren't even.
Who was this?
Sam Franklin.
Oh, Sam Franklin, man, that's a national treasure. Make sure you.
I like him. He's this year's Frankie Louvu to me. Like, he's just somebody we uncovered that's just like there that we can figure out how to keep. I will say this too.
Frankie Louvu, man, he's just out there doing it every week.
They got to sign Louvu, and I have completely shifted this. I was thinking Brian Burns was priority number one. You need to go sign Derek Brown. You need to go sign Derek Brown right now.
Let's talk about Derek Brown.
You need to go sign him right now.
You got a round of applause thing on your thing?
Nah, we just been doing this. But no, Derek Brown has looked like a man around children the past like.
The way he swung, did y'all see the way he slung
like,
Alvin Kamara?
Yeah.
I was like, hey, man, he got kid. I think he got kid. I don't know. I think
he just walked off.
He's a grown man. Don't do that.
He got his 5th-year options coming up. You've got to keep Derek Brown and build around him.
Have y'all seen the basketball play? It just happened like a couple weeks ago where the dude swatted the ball, got it, and then the kid was laying on the ground out of bounds, and he just threw it on him, like as disrespectful as it could be because he was already out of bounds. That's what it kind of reminded me of. Like, man, that's so disrespectful.
Yeah. Just like, why do you even try?
Derek Brown, like Debo, not Debo Samuels, but Debo from Friday. That's
so maybe,
trade,
from the Matt Rule era, maybe they got that right. So with Derek Brown, his 5th-year extension coming up, we don't know what's going to happen with Brian Burns and all that stuff there too. Before we get to the trial of David Tepper, though, me and Joe Person were actually talking about this at the end of our segment last week, and I realized I've got a member of the 2010 team on the panel right here. Stu, real quick, if the 2010 roster was completely healthy, who would win between the 2010 Carolina Panthers and the 2023 Carolina Panthers?
Ooh. Oh. Us. 2010. Because
we were like, is this the worst season in Carolina Panthers history? And Joe was like, well, it's either between this and 2010. And bless his heart, Joe was like, 2010 was his first season on the beat for Carolina. So that was when he first started covering the team. And he's like, oh God, every year it'll be like this. Don't get me started
on Joe. But yeah, man. We had, what was our quarterback?
Jimmy Clausen.
Yeah. So Matt Moore got hurt.
Tony Pike was in there once or twice.
Brian St. Pierre, was that right?
That sounds familiar.
Man.
Was Vinny Testaverde? Was that?
No.
That might have been the year or two before.
So Jimmy Clausen. Yeah, I was Jimmy Clausen's first touchdown.
Word?
It was against the Saints.
I just saw something. He wouldn't sell his number to Cam Newton. I just saw that like not too long ago, like a month or two ago, because he was wearing number 2. And that was college.
So it was Jimmy Clausen, me, D'Angelo, Tony Fiametta,
Steve Smith,
David Gaddis, Steve Smith, Jeff King. I mean, Steve Smith. I mean, look, if our offensive line was solid, like we just
Jordan Gross,
we were just maybe it was play calling. I can't really name it, but
I was trying to think. I was trying to remember that year too, because I was like, why were we? I remember it was a lot of injury. It was a lot of injury.
It was quarterback play. I think, like you throw a guy that, they drafted Jimmy Clausen, and, I would say that he wasn't necessarily prepared. I think that he came into the situation feeling and understanding that he was going to have some time behind Matt Moore. Matt Moore gets injured, and he gets thrown into the fire. You know what I'm saying? And
man, Matt Moore,
and I think that in itself, speaks volumes as far as what it takes to actually play well in this league. You have Bryce Young, who's a rookie, and essentially he's thrown into the same type of fire,
with less around him,
with less around him, And I mean, if he had Steve Smith, man, a game changer.
Jordan Gross at left tackle.
Jordan Gross, you have Ryan Khalil. You ain't gonna I ain't gonna sit here and tell you that they gonna beat that team 2010.
Yeah, this team can't score. This team can't score touchdowns. Period.
You got John Beeson. Dan Connor, James Anderson, TD. Charles Godfrey.
Yeah,
Gerard Martin.
what would be the total, like the over under between those two offenses? Because like I think the 2010 averaged like 12.3 points a game, and this offense can't get above 18. So
probably 25, 27. Like seriously, because again, when I was watching this on Sunday, I'm like,
I think if we knew who was playing, we would have rose to the occasion.
Yeah, we're like, oh, we playing us? Okay,
we playing us. We playing the future us.
Future us.
Oh, we gonna beat the snot out of them youngsters.
But that question came up because we were like, because even 2001, the 1-15 season where Chris Winkie was quarterback, that one was. I remember them being competitive that year and just losing games. Like it wasn't like they were getting blown out. 2010,
it was just hard to get in the end zone.
To get in the end zone.
I just remember it was very similar to, what they're experiencing now, where it's like you feel like every game you find another way to lose, type of syndrome. I remember going up to Pittsburgh, playing Pittsburgh. I don't know if it was a Thursday night game or Friday or Monday night game, Sunday night game, but it was cold, and we should have beat them, and we just couldn't. We couldn't move the ball.
That was the memory. It was just like
I remember like scratching and clawing. I was stiff arming people, all kind of stuff. It just wasn't working.
Could the 2010 coaching staff get more out of this roster? 2010 was John Fox. It was last year, John Fox. Probably so. So
Coach Fox would have gotten. I think Coach Fox would have done well with this roster.
I think he would have done well with Bryce. Like in terms of
like, hey man, it is what it is, man. Just move on.
Yeah, pick the bad day to have a bad day. Let's get into it. The main event for today, the trials of the Carolina Panthers. I wanted to do something that we could look forward to over the next 4 weeks. And obviously, the fan base has been kind of chomping at the bit to kind of figure out who's the most responsible for what we were witnessing out here. And I want to start off at the very, very top. Panthers owner David Tepper. I went and pulled two things. I've been holding on to something for about a month that I remembered from back on draft day when we drafted Bryce. If you remember, Scott Fitter and Frank Wright were at the podium. They're talking about them picking. And then like out of nowhere, like from behind a curtain.
Out of a door.
Yeah, he just kind of popped out. David Tepper just was like, hey, what's up? And he just started talking to us all of a sudden with no microphone. He just started going into detail. And he said something that now in hindsight, when I go back and listen to it, it explains so much in terms of like what we've been watching. And I wanted to go pull it. And I'm gonna play this part here for you guys to hear him to discuss why they picked Bryce Young and the logic behind it here.
Which one of these guys will be a guy that can take us here? What's the probability that this guy can take? Because there's no sure thing. So not to talk about all the different guys, but we thought this guy had the highest probability of winning Super Bowls. And I think for myself, and I don't want to speak for Frank, and I think he feels the Scott, we feel the same way. Listen, you want to win Super Bowls. And, there's no sure thing here, but it's a probability sort. And we thought this guy has the best probability of winning us Super Bowls. The way he throws the ball, the way he's a point guard, how you can use the different players in the field, how you might not have to have as many elite receivers because he's the point guard, right? So he distributes the ball to people with routes. So you can save some money there. We believe we can save money other places because of him and put that money into the defensive side of the ball. So it's like this is a guy that when you talk about here for us, for this Carolina Panther team, from from the time I guess Matt Rowland talk about the process we went through defense.
Did anybody pick up what that man just said in front of all of us here? He literally just basically told us that by us drafting Bryce Young, we picked Bryce because we felt like if we had Bryce, he could be the point guard and we could spend less money on skill position players because Bryce could distribute the ball. Did I hear that correctly? Did he not just say that to us? Yeah. Because that's what I'm hearing. So if that's what he's saying, think about what we have on this roster right now. Like in terms of what they did, like immediately after that took place, they went out and signed DJ Chark and Hayden Hurst and a 33-year-old Adam Thielen. They overspent on Miles Sanders probably, but they pretty much did what David Tepper said. They didn't spend a whole lot of money on skill position players because they had Bryce, and they felt like if they had Bryce at point, he could elevate these other players, which goes back to what I was saying at the beginning of the show. The number one overall pick, usually pick that player because that player can elevate those around him. You don't usually pick somebody at number one that needs a bunch of things around him in order for him to be successful. And that's what I keep hearing from the Bryce Young camp. That's not what David Tepper was saying on draft day. But the thing that stuck out to me was the whole, we're going to save money here and there by doing that. It sounds like he's running the Panthers like a hedge fund. Like, that's what it feels like. It feels like when things go wrong, he dumps early. He gets out of the market. If the stock's going down, if he sees something going up, he'll take a chance on it pretty quick. But you can't run a football team this way. And that was the very first thing I thought of and went back to go find it to make sure I heard it right, was him making that comment. Because I don't remember any of us really making a big deal out of what he said at the time. Like, none of us, not that I can remember, in the press or media or anything, nobody was really like, what do you mean by that? That they're not going to, are they not going to spend on skill position players? And now we've seen it. Like, we've seen the plan. So I want to get your reactions to that soundbite that was back in April on draft night from David Tepper. And now looking at it in hindsight in December and the way we've seen his roster constructed, did he pretty much tell us what he was going to do? Or was that just kind of an off the cuff type thing where he didn't know what he was talking about?
I mean, I guess I'll go first so Stu can kind of clean us up here. But part of me feels like that whole spiel, I mean, it's draft night. They're all having a good time, right? And they're feeling good about themselves. They're just having a good old grand old time. And I think the overwhelming excitement, when you're an owner and you have the first overall pick, you're going to say a lot of things you probably don't need to be saying. And hindsight's 2020. Should he even spoke there? Maybe, maybe not.
No.
Again, this was set up for Scott and Frank, like Des mentioned. Tepper came in through the same door, but was kind of standing off to the side. And then he just kind of randomly interjected right there, that clip that you just showed. No one asked him a question. He just popped in and started talking.
Took over.
The excitement taking over, the fandom as an owner that you have. But look, like, regardless of what good quarterbacks or what quarterbacks there have been throughout the league, the really good ones still have really good pieces around them. Joe Burrow has Chase Young. Trevor Lawrence right now has Calvin Ridley. Patrick Mahomes had Tyreek Hill. You see what the Chiefs have looked like without much of a receiving corps, even with Mahomes at quarterback. Brock Purdy, look how – I mean, he's been good, but look, my goodness, all the weapons that he's had. You go throughout the years, Big Ben, Antonio Brown, Cam Newton, had Steve Smith for a spell. Like, it's – every good player has to have talent around him. It's hard to judge Bryce Young when he can't even do his job. He doesn't have time to throw the football. And then when he does, we're seeing guys slip on the turf or not run a route hard, or which leads to an interception, or they're dropping passes. There's no run game. It looks like there's 15 guys on the field for the opposing team when the Panthers have the football. Because
that's a great, it feels like everything is hard. Like the most simplest plays just look like they're run in mud. Like just everything 3 yards is hard to get. Like it's just so hard.
The thing about Tepper is he's very involved. We all know this. How involved he is on a day-to-day basis, and all these rumors about him going to somebody with a play. I don't know how true that stuff is. I don't know anybody will know that. But the next coach that comes in, and I wrote about this, has to have an understanding that this owner is going to want to win right away, as they all do. But he's going to be heavily involved, and that coach can't be affected by that. I think Frank Reich, when he was in Indy, he kind of dealt with this with Jim Irsay. And I feel like it was just like, oh, I got to deal with this again. And some coaches may not be affected by that. I think Frank was just kind of like, I've already been through this before. I just want to do my job. You know what I mean? That's just kind of how I read it. And me and Sheena Quick and Vashta Hurt, we were talking about this earlier last week. It's almost like the Panthers need to get an alpha male as a head coach. Somebody that just commands the room, tells you what it is, doesn't care. If the owner comes to him, yeah, we'll sit down and talk, but I'm not going to be affected by it. And I think that's what they need moving forward. I don't know who that's going to be, but Tepper's got to find that. And he still has to understand his place in this business. Like, he has to understand football guys have to do the football things. I can still intervene, but he's got to be willing to take a step back. If he has his hands all over this thing, it's going to be hard for him to find any progress.
See, I don't know if he can. That's the thing, because everything we've seen the past 6 years, he's pretty much been a hands-on owner in terms of his fingerprints are pretty much on everything. So I started off with him with these trials because the buck stops with him. He's made it that way.
He said it himself too. Buck stops with me.
Yeah, Jim Harbaugh is the first name that came to mind when you're talking about that kind of coach. Steve Wilkes was the second.
Who I mentioned to Sheena and Vashti, and obviously he's not going to come open, but I'm just saying, like, someone like him would be like a Dan Campbell type guy. Yeah, someone you would just run through a wall for.
Ron Rivera. Yeah. Ron Rivera was kind of like that, in my opinion, where it was funny. That Amazon series that they did on the Panthers, I think it was the 2017 Panthers, 28. It was the year Cam got hurt with the shoulder thing in Pittsburgh. And people were shocked because Ron Rivera at halftime of that Pittsburgh game was in the locker room talking to the team, and he was cussing everybody out. And nobody really heard Ron like that before. So everybody's like, "Oh my god!"
And being a head coach, you need someone that's going to be able to delegate.
Yes.
And the thing is, as hands-on as you think head coaches are, they really shouldn't be so hands-on and in the mix of every single thing, because it's impossible to actually do that if you are delegating. You, as a head coach, whoever that person's going to be next, you have to trust your offensive coordinator, your defensive coordinator, your position coaches to coach. You're coaching the coaches. You know what I'm saying? You coach the coaches on what you want to see as a final product. And as well as, the other things, there's the business side to it, showing up for, the fans and, tickets and making sure you're getting all those things promoted and whatnot as not the face of the franchise, but as the delegator of the franchise at the end, you know what I'm saying? So being able to talk with the owner and being able to have thick skin with the owner, being able to, say what you mean and mean what you say, you know what I'm saying? And be able to have something to back that up, and I think, this situation, as it continues to build, and if we keep on losing games, the expectation of winning is just going to continue to grow. So this job is not going to be for, the faint at heart. So you got to come in here with your bootstraps and your bulletproof vest and get to work.
The other component to this trial of David Tepper that I pulled up here when I was talking to Joe Person last week on franchise players, something I hadn't even thought about it really, but David Tepper's owned this team for 6 years. Who is he paid other than Christian McCaffrey? He hasn't doled out any kind of major contract to any player. And he paid Matt Rule. Yeah, he paid Matt Rule.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, fellas. We got next year. This free agency is going to be something to look at.
This makes me worry.
But we got to make sure. But we got to make sure we hire the correct people, and we got to make sure that the end of this season goes as it needs to go, so that way guys in the free agency market sees the Carolina Panthers as some place they want to be at.
Here's a clip from last week describing that. David Tepper hasn't really paid anybody since he's been here in 6 years, and I hadn't really thought about it except for Christian McCaffrey. And then they traded him off in a panic week after they fired Matt Rule. And looking back on it, it's like, why did you trade him again? I'm trying to figure out why you traded this dude for no reason, really. They just kind of traded him out of here. So.
And then they held on to Brian Burns when he could have brought even more assets than McCaffrey.
The Rams have been sniffing around twice for this dude, and each time they're like, no, He's like, we're going to get him. We got him. But at this point, if you're Brian Burns, what's going to make you resign here? Like, you're going to be on your 6th head coach, like, in 6 years or whatever. So it's just a mess. So thinking about that, I'm like, well, they haven't paid anybody. Like, they haven't paid anybody other than McCaffrey. And when they did McCaffrey, remember, it was basically the dismantling of the 2015 team at that point. Like, Cam had been cut, Luke had retired, Jordan Gross was kind of forced into retirement the way I remember it. TD got cut, Stu moved on. Like, all of you guys kind of moved on right there at 2017-2018 season. And then just out the blue, they signed McCaffrey to this big extension because they wanted him to be the face of the franchise in the transition, right? I think Luke Kuechly retiring and what happened with Cam especially is what pushed them to give McCaffrey that money. But then you trade him 2 years later and you haven't signed Brian Burns. Derek Brown's coming up. I'm just kind of thinking about, you didn't sign Hassan Reddick, which you could have kept, which would have been huge. You didn't keep Stephon Gilmore. Like, all these players that they didn't retain. And a lot of that, some of that has to go to the owner, right? Like, it's his decision to spend the money.
I think to his defense, in some way, you have to be careful with when you spend your money. You can't you can't put the cart in front of the horse. Like, you got to be careful in how you use your resources. You don't want to spend millions of dollars when you don't even have an answer at quarterback. And for the better part of his ownership, you were trying to search for that guy at quarterback. When they found the quarterback that they liked, Bryce, we don't know if he's going to be a franchise guy or not, but that's what they're thinking he's going to be. Now you can start really trying to invest into this team and start putting that money into free agents or trades or whatever, because you've already done it. You've already invested so much into getting Bryce Young. Now you're all the way in. You can't back out now. Before you had to find that guy at quarterback. You're not going to spend millions of dollars on a Hassan Reddick, even though it'd be nice to keep him, in other guys when you don't even have an answer at quarterback. Because if you don't have an answer at quarterback, you're not going anywhere. But I think you need to spend money.
But now it's reversed. Now you think you might have an answer quarterback, but you don't know for sure because you have nothing around him. So it's because you let it all go or you traded it all away. Yeah. So it's like chicken and egg. So it's like, so now what do you do? Because you can't protect the asset you just brought in because you didn't keep anything before you brought him in. And a lot of that's got to go to David Tepper. If we're trying to do this like in a pie chart, like who has more responsibility or blame or whatnot, I think you got to give David Tepper a hard 40-50% of this, like, because some of this is based off of things he has told us. He's flat out told us this is the plan. This is what we're doing. And he didn't lie. They did exactly what he said, and it didn't work out. So now it's like you didn't hire fan favorite Steve Wilkes, who I just saw that clip of him when he won that first game in the locker room where Tepper gave him the game ball. Like, that was the peak of the past 6 years, probably. Like, right there when Wilkes won that game and the emotion in that locker room, and we were all thinking, this is Panther football. Like, this is what we remember Panther football being. And then he kind of pushed that out and wanted something fresh and something new, something that pops, gets the crowd going. And it never did. And now
that's twice on coaches.
Twice.
You've got to get the third one right.
I don't have a lot of faith that they're going to, if they're going to do the same process, especially if Fitter's with it. And Fitter's probably going to be next week. But if Fitter's involved in the same coaching search that he just was in, what makes me think they're going to bring in anything different, especially if he's stuck on this offensive-minded coach thing that I keep hearing, that he wants offensive-minded coach. I just want the best coach. I just want a guy that can lead a room. He don't have to be offensive-minded. That's what the offensive coordinator's for. Like, that's why I didn't understand, why is Thomas Brown even here? Like, what was he doing the whole year? If he wasn't calling plays, what do you do if you're the offensive coordinator and you're not calling plays? What's your role? What do you do?
Wow, boy. Like, why is this man? Listen, man, he's here because they thought that he can do something.
Right? Like, what are you doing here?
They thought that he had the juice and that he would call the right plays. That's why he's here.
Oh, man. Oh, it's such a mess. Real quick before we get out of here, I wanted to address the offsides call in the Kansas City Buffalo game on Sunday night. What's the wide receiver's name?
Kadarius
Toney.
He has been dragged all year on social media for drops and things and that. I see both sides of it because on one hand, I see where Mahomes is coming from. You don't want to call a play like that. I mean, you don't want to call a flag on something like that at that part of the game. But I think it was Rex Ryan that mentioned this and Dan Orlovsky, it is the wide receiver's responsibility to check to make sure that they are not offsides. It's not the referee's responsibility to tell the wide receiver.
He did check, but he didn't even look over at
He didn't look at the ref. Yeah, I think he looked at the ball, but if he did, he clearly could see it's right there. Like he's blocking the ref's view of the ball. Like you are offside, sir. Like you can't do that.
It's one of those things as young players have to develop good habits, and I think that's basically the underlying story here is that Kadarius Toney, they showed multiple clips where he was offsides.
Yeah,
and
all that. Yep.
That goes back to his tendencies, right? And one can argue, hey, ref, give us an actual warning, so that way we know about it. And if that didn't happen, then shame on the ref. But at the end of the day, the rules are the rules. You got to follow the rules.
Yeah,
and none of this would have been, a big deal. And I'm pretty sure he knew that this big play was about to come to him. So
I don't know. It doesn't look like it was scripted. Like if you watch it, like he was actually pouting. He was pouting on the route because he got like almost doubled on the route. Yeah, like you see him like throw like a fist, like or whatever, and he turns around and he's jogging up the field, and all of a sudden Travis Kelce throws it to him.
He's just a gamer.
Yeah, like literally, like it was not a planned play. Like Kelce just decided to take it into his own hands, and that's what Toney was like. He was lollygagging kind of behind the play because he was either he was mad there was no pass interference or didn't get looked at or whatever. And the next thing you know, he's running it in for a touchdown.
I just put it all back on tendencies, right? He's got to practice better habits, so that way he doesn't put his team in that situation ever again. And then I think the referees got to figure out, the NFL's got to figure out what calls that are changing the outcomes of the game. Like we need more consistency. You know what I'm saying? If guys are going to be lined up offsides, you need to go to your protocol.
Yeah.
Hey, you're offsides. Throw the flag so that way guys know. If it's a gray area type of penalty, then hey, let's not throw the flag on the most pivotal point of the game, groundbreaking part of the game. Because we seen, I think, was it the Chiefs earlier on in the year where they had an offensive tackle that was shooting off the line of scrimmage.
Oh yeah, snap? You're right. Yeah.
Was it them?
Mm-hmm, I think so.
Stuff like that where you're just missing because I don't have time for that. Like I'll let that slide. Like if you're gonna let things slide, then let things slide. But if you're gonna be accountable, then hold people accountable. Practice good habits for all the young receivers out there. Just check with the coach. Just check with the referee. Make sure the referee sees you. Give a double take. Get lined up. That's why it's important to get lined up and know what you're doing, so that way you feel like you're not rushed into your, in what you have to do.
Get
to the line of scrimmage and check with the referee. Double take so he sees you. Yell at him if he can't see you, and then
point at him something. Yeah, I see this in the high school level all the time. The wide receiver go out. The first thing they do is look at the ref and check to make sure they're on side. The ref will give a thumbs up, and they're good to go. And Toney never looked at the ref at all. He's over looking at the snap. That's why I'm like, how do you not know you're offside? You're looking at the ball. Like you're right. Literally, like you're the only person in the neutral zone. Like you can see it, and you just kept on going. And you probably negated one of the greatest plays in NFL history because I jumped up out my couch and was screaming. I was like, oh my gosh, did you just – my wife's in here on headphones like playing solitaire or something on her computer and not even paying attention.
Solitaire?
Yeah, she got playing all kinds of crazy parts of solitaire too. And I'm like, oh my God, that was the greatest play I've ever seen. And she's like, what? Like she's like annoyed that I'm being loud like during the game. Like you got to see the replay. You got to see the replay. And they never show the replay.
Next time, watch the game on your computer and with your headphones on.
Yeah, she probably would appreciate that more.
So that way she can focus on her solitaire, man. Serious out here.
Well, it's Schuyler had to get out. He had a Sports Illustrated meeting he had to get to at 11:30. We're about to bounce as well. Next week we'll do Scott Fitter, Panther Trials. The Panthers taking on who we got this week? I've completely forgotten who we're playing. It is the Falcons. Sunday, 1:00 on Fox. I believe that's a home game, if I'm not mistaken. No, they came up here when we played them earlier in the year. So that's no. We went to Atlanta.
No, it's a home game.
So that's it. That's at Bank of America Stadium, and then the Packers on Christmas Eve. The week following that, Jaguars on New Year's Eve. Right after that. So got some interesting matchups coming up here. We'll get a chance to see Jordan Love and the Packers in 2 weeks. I don't know who the Falcons are going to be starting at quarterback at this point because my understanding was Desmond Ritter is pretty much done. But we'll see. But other than that, make sure you rate and subscribe. All major podcast platforms. Go to youtube.com/@Tobacco Road Sports Radio. Subscribe there. You can get the notifications for when we go live. Usually it's on Tuesday, sometimes in the afternoon, sometimes in the early morning. This will be up on the Bleav Podcast Network, the audio version of it here a little bit later on today. And just appreciate everybody that stops by, gives comments. I know it's been a hard season. It's one of the toughest seasons I've ever had trying to cover the Panthers, but I feel like Panther content creators are kind of banding together to make sure we give you guys fresh content and you can still be somewhat entertained over the course of the season. And we'll eventually get into, draft talk, coaching search, all that stuff. We're used to it at this point. So we know what it is about that time of the year after we get out of
Good times are ahead.
Do it again.
Everybody get into the holiday spirit.
Yeah.
Eat good.
We have 2 weeks
hang
here.
out with your family.
Right. Yeah, we're going to be all right.
The good thing is that the league is set up for some really good finishes in every division, it seems like.
Yeah.
A lot of 6 and 7s and 7 and 6s. So, look, grab a bag of potato chips, your favorite beverage.
Don't let the Panthers bring you down. Yeah, don't let the Panthers bring you down.
Don't let the Panthers bring you down. There's a lot of good things going on out here in this world.
That's right. Exactly.
Too. There's a lot of bad too. And so it could always be worse.
Yeah. So until next week, we'll see where we are next week for Schuyler Callihan and Jonathan Stewart. I'm Desmond Johnson. You've been watching and listening to the Bleav in Carolina Panthers podcast here on Bleav Podcast Networks, presented by Bet Online. Keep at it.